Good afternoon, everyone. We're going to wait until everyone's in the webinar before we get started. It's great to see so many people participating, interested in this topic. We're very excited. All righty. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Lucy Crocker, and I am a consultant that works with the Department of Utilities on projects off and on. Tonight, I will be serving as the facilitator of this webinar public meeting. And what we're going to do first is have some introductions and some overview information. And then we're going to dive into the specifics about what this webinar is about, which is flood control and water quality. So a measure about that. So if you could please ask questions anytime. If you look down at the bottom, you're going to see a little Q&A thing. If you hover your mouse over it, you're going to see that you can click on it and get in there and ask questions or make comments. We're going to get to as many of the questions as we can afterwards, and we'll outline how we will communicate with you after as we're going through the Q&As. So tonight we have a couple of council members attending the webinar. It's interesting because one of them, Councilmember Jeff Harris, who's also chair of the City of Sacramento's Water Committee, is very knowledgeable about not only, this type of project, combined sewer systems and wastewater, but he's also very knowledgeable from other boards and commissions and things that he sits on, like flood control and other things. So Jeff, I'm going to introduce Jeff Harris first, and he's going to give some overviews, and then I think Jeff, you're also going to explain what the water committee is and how it's appointed, and the UREC and how that's conducted.
Yeah, thank you, Lucy. First, I appreciate everybody coming to view this webinar. Water, of course, is an essential topic to every municipality, but certainly to us. And in light of climate change, our decisions about how to manage water in all regards have become more complex and frankly, a little more costly. I have been the chair of your flood control agency for several years, and I also sit on the Regional Water Authority. So I deal with water from both sides, when there's too much of it or not enough, trying to maintain the possibility of having an uninterrupted and clean water supply, but also protect us from flood. Now, flood comes in two flavors. We have floods that are outside of our city, on the other side of our levees, that at times threatens our way of life here in the city. And we control that through flood control mechanisms, mostly levees, but other things as well. Dam operations, weirs, bypasses, all kinds of mechanisms. But we also have interior flooding. So for instance, last October, we had an atmospheric river that came to Sacramento that dumped an unprecedented amount of rain on us. In 12 hours, we had about 5.4 inches, which made it equivalent to a 500-year storm. We've never had that much water dumped on our city in recorded history. It was quite an event. So what do we do with that water? It can create a lot of localized flooding, and we did have some street flooding. It can be a source of pollution as well. When rain falls from the sky, falls on roofs, gathers chemicals from asphalt shingles, from cars, from lawn chemicals. So we've got this huge amount of rainwater, and what do we do with it? Well, we have a series of pumps and other mechanisms to temporarily store stormwater so that we can feed it into a conveyance system and alleviate that localized flooding. But because of climate change and these more extreme climate events, we really need to, I think, ramp up our game and get our game plan more attuned to large events, maybe that happen less frequently. So that's what this webinar is really all about. How does the Department of Utilities deal with localized flooding? We'll talk maybe a little bit about our combined sewer system, some of the water, some of the stormwater. We move into the combined system, and that all goes down to regional sand for tertiary treatment. Another aspect of localized flooding, we put directly into the rivers. And so we have a bunch of pumping stations and so forth to deal with that. I do want to say this, and it's a plug for our Department of Utilities. In this historic storm, they managed our stormwater extremely well. They made a lot of very critical decisions at certain times during the rainfall that kept us from major flooding. But still, we did have localized flooding. So that's what this is all about. We want to present to you information about how to move forward with localized flood control. And so that's it, really a synopsis of where we're going. We have members of our Department of Utilities staff. I see Brett Grant and Cheryl Hoon on here, and Tyler Stratton. And then the next thing I'd like to do is tell you a little bit about the Water Committee. We formed the Water Committee so that we could, at the city, deal directly with water issues. And we interface with the state, you know, on Bay Delta decisions. We sometimes talk about operations of the Folsom Reservoir. We talk about some flood control measures. We talk about localized city projects. We discuss a broad array of topics. And I think it's really important for the city to maintain the standing committee to discuss water issues, because they're obviously, water is vital to our life and livelihood here in Sacramento. So I do have another member of the Water Committee here on the meeting, and that is Mai Vang. I'm very happy that she joined the Water Committee because she has a commitment to infrastructure. And that is such an important part of being a representative in the city of Sacramento. We have aging infrastructure. We've got some issues. We've got to replace, frankly, a lot of pipes and just a lot of things that we need to do to make sure that our city is fully functional moving forward. So I'm going to turn it over to Mai. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Councilmember Harris. Hi, everyone. I just want to take this moment to thank all of you for being here virtually in space. It is 12 o'clock and it's lunchtime. And there are probably other meetings that you could be at or having lunch with a loved one or a friend, but you're choosing to be here with us today. And so I want to say thank you. I also want to take this opportunity to thank city staff and our Water Committee Chair, Councilmember Jeff Harris, really for all of his hard work to get us to this moment. As you all know, we're here today to discuss how we can invest in our infrastructure to truly protect Sacramento's clean and local water. As you heard from Councilmember Harris, our storm drainage system is up to 100 years old, and we do have an aging system, aging pipelines and pumps that are deteriorating. Before I came to council, because I was elected in November 2020, on May 12th in 2020, before I came on council, our city auditor presented an audit regarding our DOU storm drainage. And what they found was that the current level of revenue actually falls significantly below what is actually needed to make sure that we properly invest in our infrastructure and our drainage system. The last rate, when I learned as a new council member, was that the last rate increase was actually about 26 years ago. And so for me, at the end of the day, it's really about the basic of city government. This is about the quality of life. It's about back to basic, truly ensuring that our city can protect our water supplies and most importantly, provide safe and clean water. I think something that's also really important to know, because as we think about water, how do we also personalize it and like to a resident, my next door neighbors, and something I would share with them is that, this infrastructure is really important because one thing that I think we all can relate is that we go to use the restroom. Investing in an infrastructure also means that this will help us prevent sewage and human waste from flooding our neighborhood streets, right? So it's about also understanding how this impacts us personally in our lives as well, that when we think about infrastructure, it's not just something that's like big, something we can't touch, but it really impacts the everyday part of our lives in our neighborhoods. So what I really want to share is that, without a source of funding and our commitment in terms of investment, we do really increase many risks of polluting our rivers, our water sources. And as Councilmember Harris mentioned, we saw heavy rain last year that actually led to flooding on many of our streets, even though our hard-working staff was out there hustling. And I really hope that all of you will get this time to learn more about what we plan to do, but really join me and my colleagues and Councilmember Harris in this effort to ensure that Sacramento stormwater system can continue to protect our local water quality, but most importantly, to really protect our communities. Again, it's just an honor to be here today and to have the opportunity to serve alongside Councilmember Harris, who have really led this work and been a champion around water.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Councilmember Fang. We appreciate both of you giving these introductions. Before I turn it over to Carlos Eliason and have him give some remarks, I did want to give just a plug for Councilmember Harris, Jeff Harris. He was awarded the Water Leadership Award for all of California with a very prominent association last year. So I just wanted to say that he was noticed for what he does here and to benefit the entire state and everything. So
thank you, Lucy. That's very nice.
You bet, Jeff. Absolutely. And without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Carlos Eliason. He is the city's communications specialist at the Department of Utilities.
Thank you, Lucy. Once again, thank you to Councilmember Harris and Councilmember Vang for being here with us today. That was a great introduction. Really appreciate your time. As Lucy mentioned, I'm Carlos Eliason. I'm a media and communications specialist for the city's Department of Utilities. And I'm here today to talk a little bit about the city's stormwater system and basically how it works. Councilmember Harris mentioned this a little bit. Councilmember Vang mentioned a little bit. We're going to dive into that detail. So essentially, we manage all rainwater that falls in the city of Sacramento. And by extension, that means that the city of Sacramento is responsible for protecting local water supplies, as well as providing clean drinking water and protecting related environmental impacts. And this is a little bit on how that works. So rain that isn't absorbed into the ground, it will run into the streets where it comes into contact with urban pollution. And that's things like brake dust, car oils, heavy metals, trash, pesticides, fertilizers, and etc. Before entering the city's stormwater drainage system. So it's important to remove those contaminants before the water enters local rivers, and that helps protect our local water quality and the environment. Just to give you a little bit of an example, about 70% of drinking water in the city comes from the American and Sacramento rivers. To make things more challenging, state and federal regulations have significantly increased since 1996. And that requires the Department of Utilities to develop and create new programs and activities to keep up. So today, not only do we have to comply with current permits for things like our sewer and storm drain systems, we have dozens of federal, state, local requirements, and some of those examples include air quality, floodplain management, trash and human waste in rivers, levee integrities, and more. So let's take a step back, and we're actually going to talk about what stormwater infrastructure is. So the city's stormwater system is a network of storm drains, pipelines, levees, channels, streams, detention basins, and pump stations, and those all work in tandem to provide what we call drainage service. So that system includes about 140 drainage basins and more than 100 pumping stations. So here you can see a very simple diagram on how rain might flow through our system. On the right, you can see a little icon of clouds and raindrops. And so that's where rain will fall into the street, where it's collected through storm drains or other means and transferred through storm drainage pipes. And from there, it's pumped up and out into other areas. Sometimes it might go into a drainage detention basin where it will wait to be transported elsewhere. And other cases, it comes into contact or combines with sanitary sewer, where it goes to the county to be cleaned before being pumped back into the river. So there are three ways that major flooding could occur in the city, or localized flooding. The first way is a plugged or an undersized main. The second way is a pump station failure. And the third way would be a levee failure. So the city of Sacramento, we face many challenges here, many challenges and risks when it comes to our drainage system. As has been said before, the system is very old in some areas and it needs to be updated. Sacramento has also seen major growth in the last 25 years, and the current system is undersized to be able to keep up with current populations. As well, since Sacramento is so low, we have to pump all of our stormwater over levees to local creeks and rivers. And this is an issue that most other cities don't have to deal with because they actually let gravity, they rely on gravity to let that rain drain where it needs to go. We also have a lot of responsibilities when it comes to maintaining the system. And that includes levee maintenance, managing flooding during heavy storms, as was said before, and adhering to pollution permits and keeping debris clear from our systems. So as part of a master planning process for the city's drainage system, more than $236 million of necessary capital improvements have been identified. Only about 40% of those master plans have been completed. And as the rest are completed, the amount of capital improvement projects that are needed will increase commensurately. So we said it before, Sacramento storm drain is up to 100 years old in certain areas. Many levees, pipes, and pumps are rapidly deteriorating. Without repairs or improvements, there is an increased risk of polluting rivers and water sources, as well as flooding. To give you an example, the last major storm that we saw it was in October, a very, very major storm, in fact. And during that storm, Sacramento received more rain in a 24-hour period than has ever been recorded in Sacramento. We avoided major flooding and property damage, thankfully, during that storm, due to basically the dry ground, the low level of water in rivers and creeks. And that was from the severe drought that we've been experiencing. But we also avoided some of that major flooding due to the many Sacramento utility staff members. We had many staff that were working overtime constantly during that storm, and they were working to clear drains throughout the city and troubleshoot other issues. During a normal year, though, many of our staff do predict that much more flooding would have occurred. Additionally, so because drainage systems prevent flooding, which can cause property damage and health impacts to residents, that's fairly obvious. But what might not be is that can be considered a hazard to public health if they don't work correctly. So moving on to what we call our combined sewer system, we have two types of drainage systems in the city of Sacramento. One is called a separated drainage system, and you might have heard this term before, but it's called a combined sewer system. Sometimes we call it CSS for short. It's an acronym for combined sewer system. The separated drainage system has two separate pipes, and that's going to be one pipe for stormwater and a separate pipe for sanitary sewer. The combined sewer system, again, that CSS, that's going to have one single pipe, and it will transport a mix of sanitary sewer and stormwater. So you can see on this map, not a comprehensive one, but these are some areas where we have that combined sewer system. Both pink and green are different types, but our combined sewer system contains more than 280 miles of pipes. We have two major pumping stations that can pump more than 1 billion gallons of water per day, two treatment facilities, and 4 large underground storage facilities. And these storage facilities act as reservoirs and store water while it's raining, and basically that gives relief to other parts of the system that have too much water and don't have that capacity. So depending on the research material you look at, we rank between the 2nd or the 6th city in the US that's most at risk for flooding. Sacramento sits at a low elevation. We're on a floodplain, and we are mostly surrounded by levees. The stormwater system relies on a fairly complicated system of pumps to drain that stormwater into creeks and rivers. Every year, the city patrols for flooding during and after large storms from about October to April, depending on the type of water year we're having. And that can include monitoring and repairing levees. It can include cleaning pipes and inlets, monitoring pump stations, having extra staff on hand, and activating what we call a department operations center, and that helps coordinate some of those efforts. And that was actually something that occurred during that storm in October. The photo you see on this slide actually illustrates flooding that occurred in 2005. This was the Meadowview neighborhood in southern Sacramento. So according to the federal EPA, scientific studies indicate that extreme weather events such as heat waves and large storms, those are likely to become more frequent and more intense. As we've seen in recent years, a higher percentage of precipitation in the United States has come in the form of those intense single-day events. Nationwide, 9 of the top 10 years for extreme one-day precipitation events have occurred since 1996. As I mentioned before and was said by our council members, Sacramento in October experienced one of those extreme one-day precipitation events when a storm brought more than 5 inches of rain to the area. And again, that was the most amount of rainfall we've ever recorded in one day in Sacramento. And the photo you see here on the left is just one example of some of the localized flooding that occurred during that storm. And that concludes my part. Thank you for your time, and I'm going to hand the microphone over to Bill Busaith. He's the director for the Department of Utilities.
Thank you, Carlos. Hello, everyone. I'm Bill Busaith. I'm the Director of Utilities, or the Director of the Department of Utilities. I've been a registered civil engineer for almost 30 years, and I've worked for the department for over 25 years. Over that time, as you can imagine, I have gained significant experience in all aspects of the services we provide for our customers, including drinking water, wastewater, and stormwater services throughout the city. We are proposing a ballot measure for a new fee to protect water quality and prevent flooding by funding repairs and improvements to our aging stormwater system. We anticipate the measure will go to council for approval of the ballot initiative on February 1st, and that ballots will be sent to property owners by mid-February. If approved by a majority of voters, council will then be asked for final approval of the new fee in early April, and it would go into effect on July 1st of this year. The current fee has been in place since 1996, and a new stormwater fee has not been adopted here in Sacramento since that time. This fee would be based on best practices for stormwater fees, which means that we take information from the state and the county to calculate the fees to make sure that they are fair and equitable. The measure would generate about $20 million per year. Most homeowners would pay less than $6 per month. These funds would be used only for Sacramento's stormwater system and almost exclusively for needed capital improvements. The funds would also be subject to our citizen oversight body called the Utilities Rate Advisory Commission, and also to public audits. It is likely that the Sacramento Utilities Rate Assistance Program, or SURA, would be expanded to help income eligible customers pay for these new drainage fees. State law requires approval of a stormwater fee of this type by property owners. As we talk about a new fee, we want to make sure that it is clear how the proposed rates have been calculated. As I mentioned before, property rates would be determined by California state best practices for stormwater fees. A parcel's impervious area is determined by multiplying the parcel area in square feet by an impervious surface coefficient. This coefficient has been developed by the state of California based on the parcel's land use, which is determined by the county. This impervious area is then multiplied by just under 2 cents per square foot per year to determine the annual fee. The term impervious surface means the amount of space on a property where the water cannot be absorbed, like roofs and driveways, and therefore it goes into the stormwater system. This calculation is the basis for the proposed monthly fees on the next slide. These are the fee amounts for the residential properties for this proposed ballot measure. For a property-related fee of this type, it is the best practice to group residential properties into tiers based on parcel size for single-family residential properties, or units per acre for multifamily residential properties. For each customer tier, the average parcel square footage within that tier is used to calculate the flat monthly fee. For example, for the single family number 2 category, the average parcel size is 6,618 square feet. That number is multiplied by the impervious surface coefficient for that tier, and then that number is multiplied by the annual rate of just under 2 cents per square foot. As you can see, this results in a fee of $5.94 per month for the average single family home. This table shows the property types for non-residential properties for the proposed ballot measure. Similar to residential properties, non-residential properties are assessed based on parcel area multiplied by an impervious surface coefficient for that category of use, and then multiplied by just under 2 cents per square foot per year. This methodology for non-residential properties also constitutes best practices in the state. As you can see, the impervious surface coefficients vary by land use. For example, industrial uses normally have more hard surface areas, like roofs and parking lots, where rain will run off and enter the stormwater system. This leads to a higher impervious surface coefficient for that land use. On the other hand, agricultural uses include lots of open space where rain can be absorbed. This leads to a lower amount of runoff and hence a lower impervious surface coefficient. Now, restating some key points. Income eligible customers may qualify for rate assistance. All funds from the new fee will be used only for Sacramento's stormwater system and almost exclusively for capital improvements. And the funds would be subject to citizen oversight and public audits. We'll now hear from Cheryl Hune, one of our department's supervising engineers. Cheryl?
Thanks, Bill. Hello, I'm Cheryl Hune, and I'm a supervising engineer with the Environmental and Regulatory Compliance section of the Department of Utilities. I have been working on the department's water quality regulatory programs for over 25 years. My team coordinates the state surface water regulatory permits for the city's sewer, storm drainage, and combined sewer systems. The City of Sacramento has an essential role in protecting local water supplies and providing clean drinking water by treating combined wastewater, managing creeks and stormwater runoff to prevent flooding, and cleaning up trash and pollution. Most drinking water in Sacramento is produced from the American and Sacramento rivers, which means that we must protect these sources of water. The city plans to use new storm drainage revenue to improve its water pollution prevention with what we call our trash capture program. The trash capture program will help to keep trash, debris, and other pollutants such as plastics and harmful chemicals from entering our creeks and rivers, protecting our local water supplies. This new program will include installing new trash capture devices or implementing control strategies to prevent trash 5 millimeters or larger from being discharged from our drainage system to our local creeks and rivers during a 1-year, 1-hour storm event. As we mentioned before, stormwater runoff can carry pollution, pesticides, and harmful bacteria into our waterways, including the American and Sacramento rivers. Sacramento's local system of storm drains, levees, pumps, and pipes collect and help to filter stormwater to protect our local creeks and rivers from pollution. Keeping these local water sources safe and clean is essential to protect public health and long-term water supplies for our region. The city plans to protect the environment and keep contaminants out of local water sources with our pollution prevention programs, water quality projects, and combined sewer system improvement projects. The new fees will provide matching funds to help the city qualify for state and federal grant funding that could be used for water quality improvements or drainage system repairs and improvements. Some water quality projects that will help are reducing trash in our local waterways by installing trash capture devices and implementing control strategies, minimizing combined sewer outflows and discharges to the Sacramento River by improving the combined system and adding storage, and by minimizing toxic algal blooms in water detention basins by adding aeration and/or removing sediments. Now I'd like to turn it over to my colleague, Brett Grant.
Thank you, Cheryl. Hi, everyone. I'm Brett Grant, and I'm a supervising engineer with the Drainage Engineering section of Utilities. I've worked with the city for 26 years and spent most of my career in the stormwater and wastewater engineering programs. Currently, I'm responsible for supervising the planning, design, and construction of improvements and repairs to our drainage system. In my time with utilities, I have had the pleasure of seeing how the projects that we have completed have improved operation of both the combined and separated drainage systems. However, Sacramento's storm drain system is aging. Some parts of our system are more than 100 years old, and many levees, pipes, and pumps are deteriorating rapidly. Without repairs or improvements, there is increased risk of polluting our rivers and water sources and of flooding in many of our communities. To help prevent flooding during storms, the city plans to use the new storm drainage revenue to repair aging and deteriorating pipelines and pump stations. Planned infrastructure projects include improvements to our drainage basins by constructing new detention basins, trunk pipelines, and storm drains. Improvements to our emergency preparedness systems to better respond during large storms. Electrical system improvements to protect from new cybersecurity threats, and upgrades to generators that power pumps to ensure that the pumps will run during storms. We have many pipelines and other pieces of infrastructure that are failing or have already failed and need to be repaired or replaced. Example projects include repairing metal pipes that are in the ground and have already failed due to corrosion. Our pump stations are aging. The picture in this slide depicts a pump discharge pipe that was located in a major levee. The severely corroded pipe has holes in the top and is considered failed. In our combined system, the long-term control projects, in our combined system, it's long-term control projects as well as pipeline rehabilitations. We have replaced most of the old brick main pipes. Pump station electrical rehabs, electrical systems typically have 30-year useful life. Electrical components in many of our pump stations have exceeded that time frame. Security system upgrades are needed to protect against vandalism and commodity theft and to protect staff. There are more than 850 miles of storm drainage pipelines, more than 30,000 drain inlets, and more than 100 pump stations that must regularly be inspected and maintained to function properly. Funds from the drainage fee would help to reduce long-term costs by maintaining, planning, and assessing the condition of our infrastructure, most of which is underground. Some project examples include mainline pipe inspection to determine the condition. The lower picture in this slide depicts a technician lowering a closed-circuit TV into a pipeline to visually inspect the condition of the pipe. Storm drain inlet replacement, and also repairing canals. The upper picture shows a long-reach excavator removing a blockage in Morrison Creek. Collecting better data on our pipelines and long-term planning for projects to ensure our drainage system meets our levels of service. The city's drainage system is complex and requires attention to assure that it will work properly when the storms hit. This concludes my presentation. At this time, I'll turn the mic back over to Lucy.
Thank you, Brett. So we hope that you all got a lot out of the presentation, and we're going to move into the Q&A now. We're going to answer as many questions as we can during the webinar, and questions that are really specific and to your situation or we can't get to today. The Department of Utilities will respond back to you and get you the information. So I'm going to start right now with it. This is actually a really great kind of 4-part question that I'm going to have the Department Director, Bill Busaith, answer. So Bill, I'm going to give you 2 of the 4. How long will the tax be in place and what is the timeline for repairs?
So the new fee will be in place in perpetuity. For that to change either lower or higher, we would need, again, a vote of the residents of the city of Sacramento. And as far as the repairs go, we will be spending, $15 to $20 million a year on those repairs as long as we can. There's plenty of need. We will be spending that much, for at least the next 10 years and probably for the next, 10 to 15 to 20 years in order to make all the repairs that are necessary. So the repairs will be, again, about $15 to $20 million a year and for, a long time, almost in perpetuity.
Excellent. Thank you, Bill. So what did the previous tax, or in this case, it would be fee fund, what did it pay for? And who has oversight and accountability for the department projects and spending?
So just to clarify, when you say previous fee, are you talking about the existing stormwater fee?
Well, I would assume it was the previous tax or fee increase, which would have been over 25 years ago, because I don't know, it's not specified here, Bill, but that's how I would assume it would be, since there hasn't been any other previous tax.
So I'll take that one first, and then you can repeat number 4.
Absolutely.
So the current fee is, as has been stated, it's been in place since 1996. It has funded all of the operations and maintenance and all of the capital improvements to the system for many years. Unfortunately, over the past 5 to 10 years, our ability or the money available for capital improvements has been reducing significantly. The cost to maintain the system due to inflation and just increased costs have taken more and more of the available funds, and so there has been less and less available to fund capital improvements. This new fee will be used almost exclusively to fund capital improvements, and the old fee will be used to continue to operate and maintain the system in the very excellent manner that we've been doing for many years. And what was the last part of that question?
Who has oversight and accountability of department projects and department spending, things like that?
So we are accountable to several different bodies, and I'll just mention 4 of them. One is the Utilities Rate Advisory Commission. We report to them on a regular basis about how all of our funds are being used in water, wastewater, and storm drainage, and that will continue. And there will be a special accountability for this new fee. We're also accountable to the city manager and the mayor and city council for how we spend this money, and we do report to them at least on an annual basis about how our funds are being spent. And then we also fund a position in the city auditor's office that is focused specifically on the Department of Utilities and performing Department of Utilities audits. And ultimately, obviously, we're accountable to the residents of the city of Sacramento, but our accountability takes place mainly through these 4 bodies.
Okay, thank you so much, Bill. There's a couple questions that I am going to summarize. There's a person asking about the new construction building development. And I think there's an assumption that this new fee increase would pay for all of that. And there's a question, is there consideration for assessing some of the proposed costs to improve water systems on developers' builders? So that would probably be a good place to explain development impact fees and things like that.
Yes, that's a good point, and I appreciate the opportunity to explain that. These fees are going to be focused on improving the system and based on its current usage. We hope over the next year or so to be able to put a separate fee in place, which would be an impact fee, which would be imposed upon the development community. And that fee would be used to pay for improvements to the system that are necessary because of development. We will not be spending any of these funds on improvements to the system that are necessary based on future development. In other words, we won't be using these funds that we're talking about from this measure for impacts of development or future development, but rather to improve the system and to repair it in its current condition.
Okay, great. Thank you, Bill. There are two questions that are very closely related. They are asking whether or not there's any federal or state matching funds or any other state or federal funding that could help with this rate increase, that could affect it. I'm assuming maybe lower it, those kind of things.
And I appreciate that also, Lucy. We have a grant section in our department whose sole responsibility and purpose is to be looking for and applying for and getting as much grant money as we can. And so we definitely are constantly monitoring grant opportunities. As most people know, there's been a lot of federal money available recently for infrastructure. Unfortunately, most of that money is focused on drinking water, especially focused on making sure that disadvantaged communities have drinking water. There's been some available for drought resiliency and also climate change. And some of that may be applicable to what we're doing here. My main point is that we are very, very focused on getting as much grant funding as we can. And that will enhance, in addition to this fee, our ability to make repairs and improvements to the system. And it could, if we get enough, dramatically enhance that. But to date, most of the grant funding that we have been able to procure is more on the wastewater and water functions of our system. There has been some drainage, and we have gotten some, and we'll continue to be very active in seeking grants.
Yes, absolutely, Bill. Thank you. Here's another great one. Can you speak more about how the proposed improvements might help protect the city in the event of a storm like the one that struck in October of last year?
So our goal is that our levels of service, I'll explain just quickly. We have a goal that for a 10-year storm event, which is a storm event that has a 10% chance of happening each year, that we would have some street flooding, but that our streets would be available and be able to be used. In a 100-year storm event, which has a 1% chance of happening every year, our level of service is that the streets may be flooded, but there would be no structure or building flooding. And then of course a larger storm like we experienced in October would be a similar level of service, that we would hope that there would not be significant structure flooding. We did have some structure flooding in the storm event in October. But if we can get the system improved to where it should be, we would anticipate that in a 100-year storm event, while we would have some street flooding, we would not have flooding in our structures. And that's the goal. for the levels of service that we hope to be able to move towards with this new fee.
Great, thank you, Bill. So I'm going to paraphrase another question and ask you, why is the city proposing this now? Why this time?
So this has been something that the city has needed for many years. Our ability to spend money on our drainage capital improvements and improvements to the system has been eroding over the last 10 years. It's been delayed sometimes because of other initiatives that were conflicting, sometimes frankly because of a lack of political will. We have a unique opportunity right now and window of opportunity where we have support of our city council, strong support of our city management, and so far, from what we can determine, support of our residents. And so this is a unique opportunity right now that we have to get this fee in place so that we can make the improvements, the needed and very needed improvements to our system, and have resources to be able to do that.
Excellent. So this is another good one. It has some commentary at the beginning, and then basically this resident would like to know if to confirm that residents and property owners will be able to vote on the measure. So it might be good to explain the balloting process again. And then how do you hope to gain positive or negative votes from property owners who don't live in Sacramento and, you know, rent it out or whatever? And I assume that might be related to, you know, they don't live here, maybe they're not aware of the flooding impacts during storm events and things. So how does the measure work? What's the process? And then what are we doing to reach out of town property owners?
So thank you, Lucy. That's a good question. So this is definitely a Proposition 218 that was passed in 1996, requires that a fee of this type, a storm drainage fee of this type, be approved by the voters. And so when we go to our Utilities Rate Advisory Commission for a rate hearing tonight, and then to council on February 1st, which is next Tuesday, we will be asking both of those bodies to approve the ballot initiative. So council will not be approving the fee per se. They will be approving our ability to mail out ballots to our customers and allow them to vote. So the answer to the first question is very definitely the residents of the city of Sacramento, the property owners in the city of Sacramento, our storm drainage customers, will be voting on this. All of the information that we have that is sent to the property owners is sent to their mailing addresses, whether that be in town or out of town. And while some of the property owners who own property in the city live out of town, we're confident that they're aware of our challenges and problems that we have, and we have mailed them, information about the challenges to the system. So we're confident that that they're aware of the challenges and that they can make an informed vote on this measure.
Wonderful. Here's another good one about the fee. Whoops, it just disappeared. Let me see where that went. Okay, instead of raising the fee all at once, would phasing over 3 years be an option, kind of like the water fee several years ago? They are concerned for those who are on fixed incomes. So this is a great opportunity to talk about the Sacramento Utility Rate Assistance Program.
So a couple of things. One is if directed by council to consider a a 3-year implementation schedule, we would certainly consider that. Right now, what is being proposed and what has been proposed is just a one-time fee increase of, as we've mentioned, the average residential customer would be paying a little bit under $6 a month. We have a wonderful program in the city of Sacramento called the SURA program, or the Sacramento Utility Rate Assistance Program, which has been put in place by City Council. It is funded by City Council. It allows those who are eligible, and those who are eligible are those who are under 200% of the federal poverty level, to receive assistance on their rates. To date, that has included recycling solid waste rates, water rates, and wastewater rates. We anticipate that as council gives us approval to go to the ballot for this measure, that they will also be asking us to include the storm drainage rate in this rate assistance program.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Just one or two more. One of them is just quick one. Is Sacramento at sea level, Bill? Below sea level, above sea level?
Most of Sacramento, downtown Sacramento, is just a little bit above sea level, between say 5 and 10 feet above sea level. If you go into the Sacramento River, when it is at low levels, it's right at about sea level. So we are a little above sea level, but not very much above sea level. And this, of course, makes us vulnerable in many ways, especially as the impacts of climate change continue to increase.
So here's another question about how it just disappeared. Okay. Does the infrastructure upgrade plan envision separating the combined sewer and stormwater mains as a combined system? Aren't you treating additional stormwater rather than just sewage? So I think that would be a great opportunity to explain something I learned years ago, is that once stormwater and wastewater join, it's sewage. It's called sewage from that point forward. And also, I thought the benefit of the combined system going down to regional sand and being treated before it goes into the river, which isn't the case with the separated system.
So those are good points, and I'll explain a little bit about our combined system. Early in the 1990s, at the insistence of the Regional Water Quality Control Board, we performed a study on our combined system to see what we needed to do and could do to enhance its operation, to reduce the amount of flooding, and also to reduce the amount of combined stormwater that was being discharged untreated to our rivers. The outcome of that study was that it is better to keep the system combined, but increase the capacity of the system. And there's a couple of main reasons for that. One is the incredible cost and disruption to the city residents that would be necessary if we separated the system. And the second, we have estimated that it would cost over $1 billion to separate the drainage and to separate the combined system. Not to mention the many years of construction disruption to the residents. The other very important benefit of the combined system is that over 95% of all of the stormwater that falls in the combined system goes to the regional sanitation facility and receives tertiary treatment before it is discharged into the river. In the separated drainage systems, stormwater largely goes maybe into a detention basin there is some water quality improvement, but not anywhere near the treatment that it gets when it goes to the regional sanitation district. And so there is a water quality benefit to the combined system. And there is also, again, a cost issue of what it would cost to separate. And the improvements that we've made to the combined system to date over the last 20 years have vastly reduced the amount of flooding that there is, and also the amount of water that's discharged to our rivers without treatment. As we continue to perform improvements on the combined system, that will only get better and better.
Perfect. Okay, thank you so much, Bill, for all of the information that you provided. We've gotten some questions from folks wondering if we're blocking names from participant view. No, we are not. We are using a Zoom webinar feature, and that does not allow to be publishing the names of those who are attending, just so that you're aware. And then there are questions about how people can get a copy of the webinar or the slides. And so we do encourage you to go to the website that you see listed here on the top of the slide, sacramentowaterpollutionprevention.com, or you can always email SACDOUPIO for additional questions that weren't answered today, although the questions that are still remaining, the department will get back to you and answer within the next, time period, very, very quickly as they possibly can. They've got a lot of these questions and answers, but I know they will get back to you on that. So without further ado, thank you all again. We appreciate your time and interest. It's great to see, and I hope that you have a great rest of the week. Thank you.